everyone. So today I decided I was going to do some cold process soap making, and I figured I'd take you along for the ride. Give you a basic recipe and get you started on how to make your own cold process soap at home. One of the hardest things about cold process soap is the recipe. And it's honestly not as hard as you think it is once you understand the basics behind it. Now I will say you can go online and find all of those different printouts where you fill in the different weights and measurements and formulas and do all the math yourself. But in truth, it's easier just to find someone like a soap making company that's already got a lye calculator. I use Bramble berries. Their lye calculator is really easy to use and really simple once you understand the basics behind it. I will go ahead and throw a link to their calculator in the comments section below. Well, the trick with using a lye calculator is that you need to know your weights and measurements of your oils first, and that's where everybody gets a little stumbled up. So I'm going to break it down as quick as I can for you, and then we'll walk through the process of making soap. Now you can use a variety of oils. Basically anything that's considered an oil or a fat can be used in a combination with lye or sodium hydroxide to make bar soap. Now your key to getting your oils right is your percentages. So your basics are you want hard oil and you want a soft oil. And you're going to want, for a cold process bar soap, you're going to want 60% hard oil to 40% soft oil. Now, what is a hard oil and a soft oil? Well, a soft oil is any oil that is liquid form at room temperature. And in keeping in fashion, a hard oil is any oil that is in solid form at room temperature. You'll hear terms in soap making like butters and creams. They're referring to different plant matters. Shea butter, cocoa butter, they're all a type of oil. You might be wondering, well, you said 40% and 60%, but you're like, of what? Percentage is of your end product, so of your total amount of oil that you're going to be using. Now, this is where a lot of people get lost. What you can do is measure out your mold spacing and find out exactly how many ounces or liquid ounces will fit into that space. And that's going to be your starting number that you take your percentages from. You don't have to do that. If you only have one mold to use, I would highly recommend it. But if you have extras, then just go ahead and pick a number that's easy to divide and start from there. Then you can just fill your mold and then pour your extras into your extra molds. That's what I like to do. All right, so things that you're going to need for cold process soap making. You're going to need your soft oils, which I've got over here. You're going to need a big container to mix everything in. That's what the soft oils are in right now. You're going to need your hard oils. You're going to need a good portion of white vinegar. This is in case you spill anything because the lye is caustic and water will make it worse. The vinegar will cancel it out, so it's always good to have a cup of that sitting around. You're going to need your water or your liquid for mixing your lye into. This is just a basic recipe, so I'm just using water and lye. You're going to need your colors. If you want them, you don't have to color. I use mica powder for my colors. I get them in these little packets. I can get a box of like 100 different colors so I can play with my soaps. And when you use these, you want to have your pouring containers. You put a little bit of the color in, and then you put a little bit of your soft oil in and mix it beforehand. That way you're not mixing it too much when you've added your soap mixture, so you're not coming to a trace too fast. You're also going to want a good soap mold. I always have some extras just in case. They're off to the side. Your sodium hydroxide, and you're going to want an immersion blender, a stick blender. Now, I highly recommend you getting a separate one if you already have one for kitchen use, because you really don't want to use this again for food once you've made soap with it. Other things to keep in mind is you're going to want to make sure that you have a long sleeve shirt on and rubber gloves. Lye is caustic and it will burn you if it gets on your skin. This is also not recommended a project to do with little kids. The other thing that you're going to need is a scale that measures in grams and ounces. This is extremely important because once you get your measurements and all your recipe, you're going to need to get everything down to the ounce. Otherwise, it's not going to work When you put all your information into the lye calculator, it's going to tell you exactly how many ounces of water and how many ounces of lye you're going to need for the amount of ounces that you selected for your oils. And we're going to go ahead on to the next step, which is making sure that your hard oils are in liquid form, and we're going to add the lye to the water. So things to remember, when you're adding the lye in the water, you're going to want to make sure that you have nothing metal. The soap, basically, you don't want anything metal. It's just going to have a bad reaction. It could mess up your batch. So the most important thing to remember is when you're mixing the water and lye is lye goes into water. Do not do it the other way around, because it's going to have a reaction, and a small amount of water to a large amount of lye will have a very explosive reaction. Whereas if you do the lye into the water, you can do it little bits at a time and kind of control that. So we're just going to add that in, and then you're going to give it a good stir. Now this will put off some fumes, so if you're sensitive to stuff like that, you can have a mask on or you can do it outside. The other thing that this is going to do is this is going to heat up, and it's going to heat up pretty quickly. So you just want to stir it until you don't feel any little granules, and it's going to be that cloudy color like that. Then what I do is I'll take it outside to another room and let it sit until it becomes clear. And melted my hard oils, and they're all mixed together. There's coconut oil, shea butter, cocoa butter. It doesn't really matter, it's the weight that's important. So I've gone ahead and melted them. Now you can do this on the stove, but you can also use a microwave. I do recommend, if you're using a more sensitive oil, that you do little bits at a time in the microwave and then stir it until the last bits melt, because some of these oils and butters can burn. So you just want to get them to where they're liquid, and then you just add them to the other oil. While we wait for our lye to come to temperature, now, like I said, when you add the water and the lye together, it's going to cause a reaction which causes heat. You stir it really, really good, and then you set it aside and you let it sit. It'll clear out. It'll be cloudy when you first mix it, but it will clear. Once it's clear, it's usually reached the temperature that you want it at. The other thing that you want to try and make sure that you do to help with your trace is you want your oils and your lye to be within 10 degrees of each other. So you can get a thermometer and measure your lye, and then, like I said, when you do your oils, you have to heat up your hard oils to make them liquid, which is going to make them warm. So you always want them within 10 degrees of each other. So if your lye water is 95 degrees Fahrenheit, you want your oils to be no cooler than 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Stage that I also add my scent. And the reason I do this is because depending on what scent you're using, it can affect how your mixture comes to trace. So it can activate trace, it can decelerate trace. If you put it in after you've added the lye to the oil, you may not have enough time left over to work your colors. So I always like to add my scents to the oils at this point before I add the lye water, and that way I can have a better judge of how much trace I've come to, and I can control my product a little better. I am ready to add my lye to my oils. Now this part is going to go pretty quick. I apologize if I don't get everything mentioned as it goes. Alright, so we are going to pour the lye, and this is why you use a big container. So there's no fear of splashing. You want to get as much of this out as you can. Now at this point, I like to take some of my vinegar and pour it into this just to let it take care of that lye, so I can set it aside safely without any fear of it being knocked or bumped over. Now I give this a good stir. I'm only using my spatula at this point to stir this because I don't want it to come to trace too quickly. Again, this is why you use a big container. Now the reason I don't want this to trace yet is because I am going to work with it, so I'm going to be separating it out into its color portions. Now what I do with that I have a decision that I've made. I'm going to do half white and then half black with color swirl. So I know what my total weight is on my oils, and I'm going to put half of the oils into the white colorant. And the other half is going to be split up between my other colors. So, now we have those all separated out by their colors. And this is where you want to bring your immersion blender in. Trick with the immersion blender is to try not to get air bubbles. So give it a good tap, and then you're off to the races. So I have reached trace. Now what that means is, I don't know if you can see it, but see how it leaves a pattern? When I dribble, you can still see it sits up there. It's about the consistency of pudding. That is trace, and that's what you want. So what I'm doing is a kind of a pour that I've come up with. I have a piece of cardboard in between to separate my colors. So I'm just going to pour these into the mold like so. Get as much out as I can. And then with these colors, I'm just going to kind of do like a drop swirl. I'm just going to hold my little separator in place and just kind of give these a little bit of a mix. You don't want to do this too much because you don't want your colors to blend too much. Just a little swirl like that. Now make sure you're cleaning your workspace as you go, so you're not having too much of a mess. Got a little leftover. Do not do this if you don't have gloves on, because the soap has not set up and the lye will still cause a reaction in your skin. Just gonna level that out. Alrighty. Now for my favorite part about making soap is the decorating. Now I just use this little stick and make these pretty little swirls. And then what I do with this design is I take this little piece of cardboard that I put in, and I really slowly pull it straight out. And then I take my stick and I just kind of mix the edges back and forth, pulling some of the color up and some of the white back down. And then that's it. Just give it a good tap. Make sure everything is settled. Get a piece of paper towel. Wipe your edges off as best as you can. Just helps to be a little clean and tidy. And then you're going to sit this and let it gel. The reason I like this mold is because it has a lid. So the main thing you want to make sure when you're doing your soaps is to keep it covered so that you don't get this, it's called soap ash, that'll form on the top. So this mold has a lid. Now it's done, and I'm going to sit it in a nice spot where it can sit, and I leave it for 24 to 48 hours to solidify. So that was a basic cold process soap tutorial and recipe. I unfortunately won't be able to show you what that one's going to look like when it's cut, because well, at least not in this video, because it does take 24 to 48 hours to set up. But I did go ahead and grab some pieces of soap that I have made previously that are of the same pattern or similar pattern design, to show you kind of what it looks like when it's done. Now these are different colors, obviously, but so that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's once you get the ideas behind the mathematics, soap making is really, really easy. Now, if you would like to do this recipe exact, I will also have that printed out in the comments below so you can know your exact measurements and weights and follow it along. Otherwise, you can pick your own oils, you can pick your own numbers. As long as you use the lye calculator from Brambleberry, you're going to be good no matter what you do. It'll tell you exactly how many ounces you need of your lye and your liquid for the amount of oils that you're using, and then it's just adding them in the steps that I showed you in the video. I hope to do a little bit more in-depth detailed soap making with different things like goat's milk. I'd love to see a comment from you guys down below if you've tried this recipe and how it worked out for you, or if you've just done cold processed soap before. We are getting into gardening season soon, so I'll be doing a lot of videos upcoming on seed starting and the ins and outs on how you can get your garden going for the season. If you're interested in stuff like that, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell for notifications so that you can follow along and not miss any of my videos. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I can't wait to see you the next time.